Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Wesley Enoch's play Black Medea. So this is an Aboriginal Australian adaptation of Euripides Medea, and I think it's fantastic. I really, really, really like this. I think it does a lot of interesting things. I would love to see it performed. So the premise of Medea, very, very quickly, is that Medea has married Jason of the Argonauts, whom she helped to recover the golden fleece that had been owned by her father in Colchis. They come back to Greece, they get married, they have children, and now several years later, Jason is leaving her to marry the daughter of... the daughter's name is Glaucus, and I can't think of the name of the father off the top of my head, but basically he is abandoning her to make a political marriage to improve his political position in Greece. Medea is not thrilled with this, and so she ends up basically sort of fighting tooth and nail against being abandoned, and ultimately everybody ends up dead except Jason. So Medea kills Glaucus and her dad. I want to say Creon, actually, is the dad's name. She kills their two children, and then she escapes on a winged dragon or chariot pulled by a dragon, something along these lines. It's a very interesting play because in the beginning, Medea is an extremely sympathetic figure, but by the end, especially when she has brutally killed her and Jason's children, she's no longer as sympathetic. Enoch doesn't quite start out this way. Enoch's Medea starts out in a very different place, ideologically, thematically, etc., etc. So in this play, in Black Medea, both Medea and Jason are Aboriginal Australians. The difference is that Medea is from a rural community that is still very much in touch with its traditional culture, background, etc., etc., whereas Jason is urbanized. So he is from the city. He doesn't fully fit into white Australian civilization because, like the US, like Canada, like New Zealand, white Australian society remains a deeply racist society, but Jason is sort of interpolated within settler colonialism, within capitalism. He is much more culturally severed from Aboriginal culture than Medea is. He's not completely severed because he experiences these possibly hallucinations, but I think Enoch would maybe encourage us to see them as the ancestral spirits of the land, basically telling him, hey, you fucked up. Because what we find over the course of the play is that whereas in Greek mythology, Medea betrayed her father and Colchis, her city-state, out of love for Jason, Enoch's Medea has shown Jason mineral resource deposits of some kind. I don't think Enoch specifies, but it doesn't really matter, within the sacred lands of her people. And Jason sells this information to a mining company so that they can make money. So Medea in Enoch's play has directly sort of violated these consecrated spaces. But we start with this much more combative, militarized Medea than we get in the beginning of Euripides' play. Because in the beginning of Euripides' play, basically Medea is like, hey, women, mourn with me for how much it sucks to be a woman in a patriarchal society. All of this terrible crap is done to us. And she's right. It is a justified complaint that she makes. But she then shifts. Whereas section 1 starts, Medea walks in the desert, is the name of the opening scene. So I'll read you the stage directions and then the first bit. So the the first bit of dialogue actually comes in the second bit. The first bit is just action. Blackout. Medea walks the perimeter of the space. A desert wind blows, the walls come alive. She winks in and out of sight as she walks. She glides as if by magic. She enters with her child. She listens to the wind. She's concerned. She hugs her child and sends him off. Then the second portion is called Medea's Battle Cry. And this is the first dialogue that we get. I'm not frightened of you. I've faced everything I fear and defeated it. You think you are a match for me? The day has finally come, and today I will vanquish you. Today, Jason and I will no longer run, and you will feel the sharpened edge of a mother's love and a wife's loyalty. I can feel you. I can hear you coming. I am ready for you. Hear me. I am ready for you. Come out and face me. Face me. This is not a fit place for our final battle, but here you have chosen, and here it must be. Were it up to me, I would choose the open desert where you could not hide amongst these scared strangers clutching to the coast like cowering children. I have not sacrificed everything to fail now. I have dreams. Who am I to have such dreams? Who am I to go against even you? I am a daughter of this land. I have the knowledge of my people. I have the power of my clan. I have the strength of my marriage. I have the love of my husband. I have the weapons of my wits. I am Medea. So come now and face me. There's a blood debt to pay, and not a drop of mine shall fall upon the thirsty earth. So, first of all, I think this is a brilliant speech. I think this is really, really good, really dramatic, really well written. And part of what it does so effectively is it encapsulates the ethos of Medea developed over the course of Euripides' play into one speech. Is so concise and so powerful that defiance, that bloody defiance, that willingness to destroy anyone and anything in her way in order to get what she wants. That's so deeply characteristic of Medea. And so I think that's really, really good. Enoch has done a fantastic job bringing us the complexity of this character in one opening speech. And again, it's a much more militant speech than we get with the beginning of Euripides' version. We do fairly quickly, however, learn that despite Medea's assertion of her husband's love and the power and importance of that, things are not all beer and Skittles in this relationship. There's domestic violence. Jason seems to be an alcoholic, which seem to be traits that he has inherited from his father, and which he's very concerned about having inherited. And of course, they are both haunted by the betrayal of this sacred space in this land. And so that hangs over them as well. And that's really central to what makes Enoch's play so interesting and so important as a piece of indigenous drama. Because this is a thing that's very common in indigenous drama, whether that's Native American, First Nations, Canadian, Inuit, Métis, Aboriginal Australian, Maori in New Zealand, any of these sort of indigenous cultures that have histories in which very strong ties to places, to land and places, have been severed under settler colonialism. There's very often this central component of the psychology of these groups tends to be that loss of connection to the land. There's a very distinctive component of post-colonialism, or really more decolonialism, because these indigenous groups remain within settler colonial spaces. They are not properly post-colonial in the sense of liberated from colonialism, but it is a decolonial or an anti-colonial gesture to assert or enact the centrality of place in indigenous cultures. And the play actually kind of ends on this note, almost. This is very, very close to the end. There's this bit, the chorus is the sort of ancestral spirits of the land, I think. Let me just double check that really quickly, if I can. So it doesn't say... It doesn't say necessarily whether the chorus is sort of the embodied spirits of sacred Aboriginal lands, or maybe something more physical, right? A particular individual who comes as sort of and speaks as representative of these perspectives, but the chorus seems to have, like many Greek choruses, seems to have knowledge beyond what an individual likely would. So I think this is a supernatural character of some sort, but who periodically engages, especially with Medea, as sort of a direct physical entity. So Medea has murdered her child because the marriage between herself and Jason is disintegrating. Jason refuses to allow her to take their child back to her home to sort of help teach him her traditional ways. And so she's murdered their child, basically to take revenge on Jason. And the chorus shows up. And the chorus says, "The land reclaims you. In the end, we will always welcome you back. When we won't say your name and bury your body to rot for a year, the land will reclaim you. When we have performed the rites, when we have burnt the flesh from your bones and painted them with red ochre, we'll wrap your bones in bark and wail for your body, and then you'll know you can't really leave your land." And the chorus speaks to child. "She reckons she left it behind with her family, left it behind like a footprint, and every time she walks on foreign soil, that foot speaks to her, telling her it was a memory of where it belonged. You're related to the sand dunes and the water holes. You belong in your land. The land will always reclaim you." This is followed immediately by a bit called Medea and the Child. And Medea says, "Spirits, this is my son. I have failed him. He has never known his land, never left a footprint. I've abandoned him to follow his father. I've kept from him his songs and dances. I have denied him his family. Though he has tasted the spirit from my breast, I've refused him his place in the land. I've gone mad with living in two worlds. In this long, dark night, I see it clearly. If he stays, he will become a copy of his father. He will grow up bruising the ones he loves. His children will live in fear. He will be another wandering soul. A mother's love will not allow it. Spirits, the moon pulls me like the tide. I will not allow the sun to rise for him another day in this house. Before this night is through, my son will be freed. Before the next day dawns, my son will know the spirits of his land. I will take him. Tonight I'm coming home. Let no man stand in my way. And so again, this element of the cultural connection to the land, to place, and the traditions associated with it is extremely important in sort of global indigenous opposition to settler colonial societies, which destroy those connections between indigenous cultures and spaces, generally in pursuit of material wealth, cultural power, possession of land as opposed to land as place that in itself has major cultural significance, etc., etc. And of course, we see that the indictment of capitalism as a force that leads to the exploitation of the land with Jason and Medea's selling information about mineral resources on sacred land to this mining company. So we have that indictment of the settler colonial vision of what it means to be in a place. And what is asserted in contrast to that is the Aboriginal mode of being in place, which is a very spiritual connection, a very traditional ancestral connection to place that respects a place as place in itself, right? So it's not just this is territory. This is a space that is worthy of respect in its own right. That's not a great way of putting it, because that doesn't, I think, convey the sort of depth and importance of this way of looking at the world. But places is treated in many indigenous cultures as though it is a rights-bearing subject worthy of ethical consideration in a way that under settler colonialism and capitalism it simply is not. And I think that becomes central to Enoch's play.